My name is Thomas Spear, and I'm running for Circuit Court Judge. This is the 11th Judicial District, which is Deschutes County, and it's for Position 5. Judge Barb Haslinger is retiring after sitting on the bench for 22 years. My background, and that's kind of what we do as candidates for Deschutes County Circuit Court, starts in Hillsborough, Oregon. I was born and raised in Portland, graduated from Hillsborough High School. I attended Santa Clara University and obtained my Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry. I then went into the United States Navy, was a commissioned officer, and served aboard a fast attack submarine. I had the honor and privilege to serve as officer of the deck on several deployments in the late 1980s. It was a very interesting time, many interesting stories, and it was thrilling. At that time, I was about a 26, 27-year-old young man making decisions that affected the lives of the officers and crew, and I felt very privileged and honored to do that. After the Cold War was ended, I returned back to the Portland area, and I worked at Portland General Electric. I don't know if you remember the Trojan nuclear power plant. I worked as the hazardous materials supervisor at Trojan. Homer Simpson was one of my employees. I was there for a little while and realized that the place wasn't going to make it. I had always contemplated on going to law school, so I attended Lewis and Clark Law School at night while I was working for Portland General Electric. The plant shut down. I needed something to do. I've always been very active, and a friend of mine worked at the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. And I took an internship there for the last year of my law school, and I worked at the DA's office. I worked in the domestic violence unit. And the moment I stepped into court, I realized this is the place for me. I represented the state and victims and brought justice. I called my folks every night, talked about the cases I tried. It was wonderful, it was exhilarating, and I had the bug. I wasn't Perry Mason, I realized that, but I felt like I did a very good job, and I was hired full-time at the Yamhill County District Attorney's Office, and I worked for Brad Berry there. Perfecting my craft, becoming a better trial attorney. And in 2000, I took a felony position at the Deschutes County District Attorney's Office. So from 2000 to 2007, I was a felony prosecutor, prosecuting some of the most violent felons in Deschutes County. I don't know if you recall, James Kuhn murdered his girlfriend. I prosecuted that case. Eric Barbie and several others had a very violent attack at the old Sweetwater's restaurant here in downtown Redmond. Prosecuted that case. Eric Barbie got 37 years. Prosecuted Matthew Reason. He received a sentence of 1,100 months for brutally and physically sexually assaulting his stepchildren. There were many, many cases I could tell you about that I prosecuted, and felt like I was doing a very good job for the community. In 2007, I left the district attorney's office and went into private practice. I've been in private practice since. I practice about 60% criminal law, 20% family law, maybe 25%, and the rest patent and business law. I also sit as a circuit court judge pro tem since 2007. In 2007, when I left the DA's office, the Oregon Supreme Court appointed me as a circuit court judge pro tem. I presided over cases, handled landlord-tenant, small claims, traffic matters, when the circuit court wanted and needed my assistance. So I presided over 100 cases as a circuit court judge, trials as well. I'm asking for your support because I believe that balance and perspective is an important quality for a circuit court judge. I've had the experience in the courtroom. I understand how to make decisions in the volatile environment of a trial, which is what we are electing. The circuit court judge is a trial judge. A trial judge who has to make decisions during the course of a trial. Most of you will never appear in circuit court, or hope not to ever appear in circuit court. And that's understandable. But you, I'm sure, have a family member, a friend, a co-worker, a neighbor who has appeared in circuit court. And the decisions made by a circuit court judge can affect their lives forever. So it's important that you understand the qualifications and experience of the candidates that are running. I believe I have the experience in the courtroom having made those tough decisions as a prosecutor, as a naval officer, and as a circuit court judge. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to talk with you about my candidacy. My wife and I live in Bend. We are raising our 3 children. I'm the past president of the Deschutes County Bar Association, past president of the J.R. Campbell American Inns of Court. These are some public service aspects of my career, which I believe as a professional, that's something that we should all do. I'm also a coach for the Summit High School mock trial team. We went to state this year. Very fun experience. I think the future looks bright despite what you see on the news. And again, I'm just very pleased to be here today. Thank you.
Oh, I'm Randy Miller. I'm running for Circuit Court Judge as well. I do want to extend a thank you to everybody here for having us. We appreciate it. It's a great service organization, and I thank you for that. I want to tell you what I think matters most to voters, or should matter most to voters from where I sit in making a decision this election. The bench is comprised of 7 judges. 2 of the most recently elected judges came out of the DA's office, and so they have that criminal law background. It's been quite some time since we've had a civil litigation attorney, a complex civil litigation attorney, come to the bench. Mr. Spear and I both have very different backgrounds. He's a criminal defense attorney today, and he stated his prosecutorial experience before that. And I've been doing civil litigation my entire career. And so there's a fundamental choice between the 2 candidates as to what you think is beneficial to the bench. Before I decided to file, I met and talked with all 7 of the judges, and I asked them about my experience, and I asked them about, frankly, what they like about their jobs. I asked them about the tough cases they face and the things that keep them up at night. I wanted to know answers to all those questions before I decided to file. I know the judges. I've litigated in their courtrooms, all but one of them, Judge Bagley, our newest judge. I've not litigated in her courtroom yet. I came very close recently, but the other 6 I certainly have. And here's what they've shared with me. They've shared with me that it's valuable to have that civil litigation as a complementary background to the bench as a whole. And the reason for that is simple. It improves the quality of justice, and here's why. There's over 20,000 matters a year that come through that court. If it's a criminal matter, by definition, it involves one defendant. If it's a civil matter of any kind, which, by the way, is everything that isn't a criminal matter, by definition, it's going to have a plaintiff and a defendant, or at least 2 parties. And frankly, in my experience in complex civil litigation, and maybe some of you here who own a business and have experienced a dispute, it's not just 2 parties, but it's many, many people. So I want you to know that over 20,000 matters, we're talking really about tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of people, both here in Deschutes County and elsewhere that do business or connect with Deschutes County in some way, that have matters that are resolved by the 7 judges on the bench. And so it takes a background, when you look at the bench as a whole, it takes a background that covers all areas of the law. It's very important. There's no question that both candidates, and it's true in every race, are going to have to learn new things. It's just the way it is. But given the fact that in 2010 and 2012, we elected DAs who have criminal law background, and that it has been some time, you just need to assess whether you think that it's valuable to have that civil litigation background, because the fact of the matter is we're different in those ways. That's a decision you should look at, or a thought I guess I'd ask you to consider. But here's another one I think is very, very important, and I can only speak to myself, and it's this. What's the motivation for the candidate? Who are they as a person? Because I'm going to tell you, judges don't try cases. They make decisions, and a judge told me that. They make decisions. They don't try cases. And they make all kinds of decisions. And in 2008, by the way, it was less than 0.4% of all civil litigation matters actually made it to a jury trial. And yet, we know that all those matters were filed. So what happened? Judges made decisions that impacted the parties' willingness or ability to continue. They either resolved those cases outright, or the parties gave up because a decision made by the judge informed them about the risk in going forward, perhaps the cost. But the point is this. Judges made decisions. Those cases were filed. So decisions are being made. That's what judges do. So very important. Here's my background, very brief in the short amount of time I've got. I'm a combat veteran. I was by the time I got out, I was a sergeant. I was a team leader in a special operations unit. I served in Desert Storm. I served in supportive operations in Somalia. I know the value of a human life, perhaps in ways that maybe some of you share here, but maybe many of you don't. I served as a police officer when I returned to my community. And it was there that I was inspired, based on my service background and now marrying that with the law, that I became, frankly, inspired to go to school and explore how I can get a formal education in support of what I wanted to do. So I went to college at COCC, transferred into the Linfield program. I'm a big fan of COCC. I got my bachelor's degree in Linfield, did very well in school. Along the way, my wife, who's a neonatal intensive care nurse, worked at St. Charles, and we had 2 girls who are now in high school. And then I wanted to move. I wanted to go to law school. I was ready. But Terry was doing very well in her job. The kids were coming along, and we decided to give it a shot and see if I could get a quote-unquote real job. So I went to work, and very grateful for it. I went to work at Les Schwab Tire Company. I was an auditor, and that was the year they hit $1 billion. The Firestone tires, some of you may remember, had problems, and so everybody came to Les Schwab, and it tipped the scales, and they reached the $1 billion mark. Learned an awful lot about business as one of 3 auditors in that company. At the end of the year, I talked to my wife, and I said, honey, I appreciate it, but I really want to be a lawyer. I want to go do that. She agreed. We moved over to the Valley, and I attended Willamette University College of Law, and I did well again there. And it's not because I'm any smarter or less smarter. It's frankly because of my background and experience as an adult going back to college. Some of you may know, you just have a tendency to do your job a little better. So I did well, and I was recruited into Schwab, Williamson & Wyatt, which is a very large, it's one of the largest Northwest regional law firms. They recruit from the top of the class. And I was very fortunate to get that opportunity, and I worked for them. The first day on the job, I had 2 pleadings in front of me, and I looked down in Patent Litigation Group. 3 names on the pleadings, 2 different cases. 3M, GE, Texas Instruments. All 3 of them at one point were the largest companies on the planet. I'm going to tell you, I learned an awful lot working at Schwab. Those companies don't give up. They fight tooth and nail. And that was more or less my experience working for a large firm, and I got an awful lot of experience doing it. I've litigated in courts, in fact, about 13 jurisdictions in this state circuit courts, both federal courts, bankruptcy, U.S. District Court of Oregon. And I guess I just want to tell you this. If you've read or heard that I lack courtroom experience, that is a false assertion. And it says something about the people who make that statement. It's just false. You can call me. There's a phone number on the bottom of the flyer. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. How I came to being a candidate in this race, very simple. In November, I heard that Judge Hasslinger was going to retire. I have been thinking an awful lot about finding ways to give, I should say, frankly, stop my practice and find other ways to serve my community because I missed it. That's the reason. She announced her retirement. I told you I talked with all 7 of the judges, wanted to talk to them about my experience as a civil litigator. And it was only then that I made my decision to file. So that's how I came to be in front of you today, months later, and I'm proud to be here, and I appreciate it.
So in your circuit court, you don't have a jury, is that correct? The judge makes the decision?
No, you do.
There's
you do. The reality of I want to answer your question. There's criminal matters, there's civil matters, and in civil matters you have a right to a jury trial, but oftentimes you don't have them. The better answer to the question is this. Juries make findings of fact. Judges can too, but it's typically juries that do that. In criminal matters, the reason there's so many jury trials, and I believe my opponent will tell you he's got, frankly, a ton of jury trial experience on the criminal side of the docket that I don't have. I just don't have it. I have civil litigation experience trying matters to the judge on the civil side, and I have a jury trial on the civil side. Those jury trials, as I shared with you earlier, are hard to come by. And on the civil side of the docket, it's typical that the facts they're usually not disputed at the end of the matter, and the parties typically agree to have the judge resolve the issue. And again, that's borne out with the statistic I gave you. In 2008, the State Bar put it out, less than 0.4% of all civil litigation matters end up with a jury trial. But there's so many cases filed. So both occur, and that's why I suggested to you what you ought to ask is, what does a judge do? Not whether a criminal law or criminal defense lawyer tries cases to a jury. The DAs are running. They're talking about their trial experience. Well, of course they are. They're going to try cases because in criminal matters, facts matter. The law is, frankly, very well settled. Assault and battery is assault and battery. But whether someone did it, the jury gets to decide those issues. In the civil side of the docket, it's rare to come across a jury trial, unless you're a personal injury lawyer, then you do. But that's a small percentage. And in fact, in 2011, Deschutes County statistics, there were 21 jury trials on the civil docket. That's it. And most of those, 16 of those, were jury trials. I'm sorry, 21 total trials. 16 of those were jury trials, 5 of them were to the bench. And yet there were thousands of matters. So it's a very different practice. The judge has to do it all. Which is why I told you the complementary background of the bench matters. And that's why it matters that we had 2 judges coming out of the DA's office in the past 2 elections, and it's been a long time since we had a civil litigation attorney come in. And frankly, that's what the bulletin said when they endorsed me. That's exactly one of the points they specifically stated. It's a timing issue. So it's not that one's less qualified, it's just different backgrounds.
Yeah, let me speak to that. You know, Randy's had 1 jury trial, and we are electing a trial judge. Now, there are 414 active attorneys in Deschutes County, and most of those attorneys are civil practitioners. A small percentage, I'd say around 20% of the bar or less, actually practice just criminal law. So we've had 2 previous candidates for circuit court who came from the DA's office, and they were only prosecutors. I've been a prosecutor, defense attorney, and I do family law, which is what Barb Hasslinger, the judge that's retiring, that was her background, doing family law. So these 414 active lawyers are provided an opportunity to give a preference for the next circuit court judge. 203 of them voted. Now you can imagine that 203 are probably those attorneys who are concerned or have some interest in who our next circuit court judge is, because many attorneys actually don't even go to court. So many of them probably did not vote. But 203 out of 414, so almost half the attorneys in Deschutes County voted on who they would like to see as the next circuit court judge. And they chose me overwhelmingly, 68%. So I think that that's very telling, because the voters selected somebody with criminal law background in the last 2 elections, and I have that criminal law background, and I have the support, what I would believe is the majority of those civil practitioners who practice civil law. That's just the numbers. So I think those attorneys had an opportunity to look at the various backgrounds of the 2 candidates, whether they like the fact that I've actually sat as a circuit court judge. I've had some of them appear in front of me. I've had Randy actually appear in front of me. I don't remember. He told me that he tried a case. It was a landlord-tenant eviction case. I don't remember it, but I'm sure he did well. But I think that's why the attorneys in Deschutes County overwhelmingly selected me for circuit court judge. I understand the editors of the Bulletin thought that civil law might be important, but I would look to the practitioners who actually practice in the courts and are concerned about who our next circuit court judge is. So, thank you. Yes?
I have a question I would like to ask you that was sparked by Randy. So 2 of them have DA backgrounds already. There's 4 still sitting. What are their backgrounds?
Okay, the 7th circuit court judge, Barb Hasslinger, prior to sitting on the bench, she did family law. I think she also did some criminal defense work as well. Judge Adler was a prior to being on the bench, he did civil law. There's a happy dollar right there, I think. Judge Brady was out of the prosecutor's office, then was in private practice, similar to myself. Beth Bagley was just in the DA's office. Wells Ashby just in the DA's office. Judge Forte, criminal law background. He also did some estate planning and things like that. I think he had a practice up here in Redmond, if I'm correct. Does anybody remember Stephen Forte in private practice? He was a juvenile referee, so he did primarily criminal law, dependency work, stuff that I've done as well, delinquency and dependency work. Very challenging stuff I do and have done as both a prosecutor and private practice. I'm trying to think of all the... Roger DeHoe. He was appointed by Judge Kitzhaber. He came out of the Attorney General's office. His prior background is in criminal law, prosecution, and defense, similar to myself. He also did some business litigation for the AG's office, but primarily he did prosecution and criminal defense. That's his background. So I think I've hit...
I think that was 4.
Well, there should be 7 of them.
Yes, but we know about 2.
Okay.
And there's 1 vacancy.
So yes,
so that is,
yes. So did I answer your
you
question?
answered my question. Thank you.
Yes. Or I don't...
Who determines what court or judge hears a case, and do they take into account that background of the individual judges?
They have a schedule now. It's actually gone through several iterations, but what they try to do is rotate the judges. So 1 week you could be sitting as a trial judge on a criminal case, the next week you could be on a family case, the next week you could be on a civil case, or maybe 1 week all you're doing what I call the docket, which you're calling cases, you're doing sentencing, probation violations, arraignments, things like that, what I would call routine matters that are kind of quicker and you know, motion practice, things like that. So you kind of are set up to do different things each week. The 7 judges, if you look at what they do on a weekly basis, that you can find their docket online, about 50 to 60% of what they do is criminal law matters. That's just a fact, because of the Constitution requires that these matters be heard. 20 to 25% is family law matters. You should check out Friday afternoon how many people run to court because of visitation issues. It's fascinating. And then the rest of it is civil law. A lot of civil law cases, I disagree with Randy, that they get resolved because the parties can't afford to continue litigation. It's not that a judge has made a decision. It's expensive to litigate a case. That's just a fact. There are very few motions for summary judgment, for example. Temporary restraining order hearings. They have some, but they're just not that frequent. So.
Can I respond to that? The answer to your question, the short answer is the judges have to do all those cases. Whether they rotate them weekly or not is just logistics. The decision they made about a year ago was they needed to speed up the docket. And they used to take a judge, like Judge Bagley was one of the last judges to do this, and she would sit on the family law court there for a number of months, frankly. When you do that, all those matters, they bottleneck to one judge. And the statistics for resolution of these cases bogged down some, which are measured, by the way, statewide. And the judges looked internally, which I thought was very, very commendable of them to do this. They looked internally at each other, and they decided no more of that. I know that you like this one, and you like that one, and you've been doing this for 20 years and prefer not to do this anymore. But they all understood the need to speed the docket up, which is all about, frankly, access to justice. It's the ability for any one of you, which is you're the folks that the court is for. You expect and you deserve to have your matters heard in a timely fashion. So the judges looked internally and they changed that. And so now they all do everything. How they do it, Mr. Spear kind of commented on that, but the point is they all do all the different cases now. And here's what changed from where I sit, by the way. I appreciate some of his comments. I don't agree with them either. I am a complex civil litigation attorney. I do nothing but that, and I will tell you there's plenty of summary judgments. I've written and succeeded in many of them. It's all I do, that practice. I'm familiar with, I have 16,000 to 17,000 hours billable that are recordable in that practice. I know what I'm talking about. What I want to tell you is that now, instead of having one judge per civil matter, I've actually had in a recent matter that I had 5 judges. It does change your behavior as a lawyer. You have to brief differently, but the point is it resolved faster. But that's the answer to your question. A couple of quick things. Mr. Spear is not a pro tem judge. He has experience being a pro tem judge, but he doesn't have I think I heard him say that he is. That expired, he shouldn't say that because it stopped in December. He's not a pro tem judge anymore. And when he was, it was on a limited basis. It was a limited basis. He didn't hear the cases that he and I are going to hear if one of us should win this election. So that's a fact. The trials that he heard were in small claims matters and eviction cases. They weren't jury trials, and there's a difference. Now, it's a very vital, important piece of our court system, but it's not the same thing that he and I or one of us will be doing should we become elected. What I want to tell you is this. I think honesty and integrity matters. I think the fact that Mr. Spear has finally acknowledged after 3, 4 events, you say you don't remember, but you think I tried a case in your courtroom. I've offered you the judgment.
Your only trial.
Excuse me. You said in the League of Women Voters debate that I'd never tried a case in state circuit court. I corrected it. He said in the local debate that I'd never tried a case in Deschutes County Circuit Court. I had words with him and I told him stop doing that. It's not true. It's wrong. In the Inns of Court debate, I offered him a copy of the docket. He said, well, we'll just take his word for it. But he shoved the docket away. And today he says he doesn't remember. Again, I'm happy to provide you with your judgment and your signature. I'm happy to give you the name of my client that appeared in your courtroom. And frankly, Bruce Abernathy was called to the stand, and I'm surprised you don't remember that.
I've presided over hundreds of cases, Ray.
Great.
And I don't think an eviction is a complex civil litigation.
We've got it cleared up, but thank you.
Let me respond to that. Sorry, sorry. I have a circuit court judge pro tem for 6.5 years. In December, the Supreme Court and the presiding judge wanted me to continue, but I had too many matters. I've actually had 3 jury trials since January. I've presided over hundreds of cases, and when somebody tells me that they have extensive civil litigation experience, I would expect to find a record of that. I'm unable to find any kind of record where Randy Miller has had a trial in any circuit court in this state, and it's easy to do. You can look on the database called Oregon Judicial Information Network. I have told Randy this, and I can tell each and every one of you, you can go down to the circuit court here in our county, and they have a terminal there, and you can find out how many cases each attorney has appeared in circuit court here in Deschutes County. Since 2007, when I left the DA's office, I've appeared in over 800 cases. Randy, his appearances, 17 cases here in Deschutes County. None of those resulted in a trial. The reason his complex civil litigation case, the landlord-tenant eviction case, did not appear up on OGIN is, like he said, they don't capture eviction cases and small claims cases, because those aren't cases typically heard by the circuit court judge, they're heard by pro tem judges. So he's appeared in 17 cases here in Deschutes County. I've appeared in over 800. You can look at every jurisdiction in the state, every circuit court. He's appeared in 21, including the 17. That's a fact.